Good morning and welcome to this grab and go session about DevOps at scale. We have around 45 minutes with you today, and if you have any questions throughout, then we would like you to post them in the chat and we will answer them after the presentation in the Q&A. The session consists of 4 parts. We will start with looking at DevOps. So is it more than just CI/CD? And then we'll talk about how a DevOps journey typically looks like and cover some of the most common challenges, especially around scaling DevOps throughout an organization. In the third part, we are going to talk about the important role platforms play in organizations that manage to scale successfully. And we will end with introducing you to the Deloitte DevOps Cloud Platform, short DCP, and what it has to offer. So who are your speakers today? My name is Tim Klinke. I'm passionate about agility and DevOps and have a spike in computer science. And before joining Deloitte, I have worked with both startups and globally operating companies in the private sector. And since joining Deloitte, I've been mainly occupied in the public sector. And my roles, they vary from Scrum Master to technical roles as a developer. And within Deloitte, I'm facilitating the Nordic architecture community, and I'm building the DevOps capabilities. And with me today is my colleague, Steffen.
Thank you, Tim. My name is Steffen Carlson. I've recently joined Deloitte from Netcompany. In Netcompany, I mainly worked as a tech lead and a Scrum Master, but later became project leader for one of the largest projects within the public sector in Denmark. My background is theoretical computer science, and just like Tim, I have experience from working in startups before my time in Netcompany. Within Deloitte, likewise, I'm working in the public sector, as well as currently building up our internal development capabilities. So, is DevOps really more than just CI/CD pipelines? Let's figure out, Tim.
Thanks, Steffen. So, before we talk about scaling DevOps, let's have a look at one of the most used definitions of DevOps. Ultimately, DevOps is about continuously delivering value to our end users. And this includes the speed and frequency at which we are able to do this. And we want to be able to release new functionality faster and faster and faster, and get from maybe 2 releases per year to releasing each sprint or each day or whenever we want. And the first part of the quote, though, might look a bit general at first sight. So let's take a closer look at what is meant by the union of processes, people, and tools. As mentioned, the goal is to optimize for speed. And to achieve that, we need to get the people aligned. We need collaboration across multidisciplinary teams, which is something that Agile actually espouses in the development team. And DevOps takes that and extends that to the operations, so development and operations. And one of the key factors in achieving this is establishing common goals between the two. The processes need to support this, so we want to be lean, so generating more value with less waste. And that means no manual handoffs, no waiting times, and no toil. And besides that, gathering and using the feedback from our end users is crucial, because only from that feedback we can actually measure if we have successfully delivered value to them. So our process needs to support this feedback loop. And we use tooling to make all of that happen. So tooling enables automation, and automation enhances our productivity. So now we're able to release functionality to our users easily and anytime, which enables us to experiment and find out if our business hypotheses actually deliver the desired results. Now, we would like to hear from you. Do you agree with this definition of DevOps? So please please use the chat to share your opinion. Write why are you doing DevOps and what are your goals?
We have just heard about the 3 pillars. Let's take a quick look at the processes and people pillars. There are 7 different DevOps habits that we need to master. Afterwards, we'll have a look at the 7 DevOps practices in relation to processes, and tools. Let's begin with the focus on the flow of customer value. This is a mind shift, probably a strong one, especially for development and operation. Our developers are not done when they deliver the functionality, like checking the code into the version control. It's a part of delivering a functionality to test the code, deploy to production, and gather user feedback. Through that mindset, we remove the walls between dev and ops and foster a customer-focused mindset in our teams. Now let's take a look at team autonomy and enterprise alignment. This is a great one. There is a balance between autonomy and letting teams do what they want to do in alignment. We need to get business alignment mapped with that enterprise or that team autonomy. Technical debt can come up and bite you and slow down your ability to deliver code efficiently and therefore at the end value to the customer. So we want to focus on that and manage it rigorously. Take time in our schedule to reduce that technical debt. That's a key.
So let's have a quick look at the 7 DevOps practices. We assume that this is where most of you currently are investing your time in. So we have the most well-known practices of continuous integration and continuous deployment. And the idea is that we should be testing our code and compiling it at every single version commit. And getting through the pipeline to a test environment and out to production needs to be possible at a rapid cadence. Releasing functionality must be easy and risk-free. And if we only do it every other month, it is likely to be really hard and it's gonna be filled with bugs. Test automation is crucial to enable the speed. So this can be difficult as we need to not only run unit tests, but also integration, deployment, and user experience tests. And not to forget about security. One of the more advanced practices is infrastructure as code. We want to get from manually executed runbooks to infrastructure that we can automatically test and deploy. And therefore, all of our infrastructure should be checked into version control, and it should be related to our application code. Application performance monitoring is a practice that sometimes gets short. We need to monitor our production and watch our applications to get not just the performance and error information, but also usage information. We can use these insights on how our users interact with our application to evolve the application in the future.
All right, so what we have seen here is that DevOps is indeed more than just a CI/CD pipeline. We assume that a lot of you are following one or more of these practices and habits already. In other words, DevOps has become popular. Some might even say that following DevOps principles and habits is no longer a competitive advantage, but a necessity if you want to stay relevant in the market. A notion we like is that the term DevOps might fade away as the underlying principles will become second nature to any IT organization in the near future.
In our second part, we take a look at the DevOps journey. We assume that you either have started a DevOps initiative and are considering scaling it through your organization, or you might investigate in getting started with DevOps. And please let us know where you see yourself on the DevOps journey by posting again into the chat something like "not started yet" or "scaling at the moment." In the previous section, we have discussed how DevOps can be defined. And within Deloitte, we have developed the PACE framework, which guides us and our clients to successful transformation towards DevSecOps. And by the way, if we talk about DevOps, we always have the security part in mind as well. So security is just a non-negotiable for all of our clients. So the aim is to move from a traditional to a modern DevOps and cloud native approach to software engineering. And this transformation journey offers us the speed, stability, quality, and security. Hence, it enables you to unburden legacy debt, to reduce toil, and to even unlock new value from your existing assets. And the PACE framework marks 4 critical pivots toward that: process, architecture, culture, and engineering. It helps break through traditional barriers by really blending the technology and the engineering part with the culture. So let's start with process. Think product, not project. The process pivot marks a shift from project-based operating and funding models to a product model. We will establish engineering teams that work on long-lived products and services. And these product teams release in small batches based on agile delivery and are guided by real user feedback. We need to change our architecture towards service orientation. The architecture pivot is a shift from tightly coupled monolithic systems to these loosely coupled service APIs. By using modern technology, such as the containers, a whole new flexibility around scaling can be achieved, which then leads to a better customer experience and at the same time to an optimal cost structure. Let's look at the engineering pivot, which is actually at the core of DevOps. Codify everything in the software development lifecycle and not just the application. We're talking about pipeline as code. We're talking about infrastructure as code. And we're talking about policy as code. Just everything. The 4th pivot is the culture pivot towards continuous learning and improvement. And this pivot is arguably the toughest to achieve, yet the most important. Outlearning the competition is today's competitive advantage. Continuous learning, we can achieve continuous learning through cross-functional and cross-disciplinary teams, through establishing these rapid feedback cycles, and through holding truly blameless postmortems once something has gone wrong, so we can avoid it in the future. The 2 areas spanning across the 4 pivots is governance through embedded security, as well as measuring success. And if we don't measure, we don't know. And if we don't know, we don't learn. So an organization's ability to measure can really determine the success or failure of a DevOps journey.
Now it's time to talk about the journey towards DevOps, which can be described in 5 stages of maturity. The 2 first stages are normalization and standardization. In these stages, trust is built, both in the benefits of the tools and practices, as well as in the organization. All application code is in version control, deployments has become less painful, as an example due to the automated test and the CI/CD pipelines, and the teams start to standardize. Stage 3 is the critical stage. At that stage, the teams can do work without manual approval from outside of the team. This autonomy is granted on the basis of the trust generated in the previous 2 stages. Teams accelerate through reuse of deployment patterns for apps or services. Infrastructure changes are now tested before they are deployed to production. Shortly, we'll deep dive on common challenges of this stage. In stage 4, everything gets automated, including infrastructure and security policy configurations. Everything is in version control. And then at stage 5, a mature self-service platform is available to the teams, accelerating their work even more. An interesting takeaway is that organizations do not progress to self-service and security integrations until stage 4 and 5. This is after individual people are giving more autonomy to work without manual approval from outside. So there we see the culture pivot at work.
We will now move on to discussing 4 main challenges for scaling DevOps. Challenge number 1, lack of standardized technologies and processes. Teams need to be granted a certain amount of autonomy also regarding their choice of tools. Yet what many organizations experience is that governance becomes expensive and nearly impossible to manage. And besides that, separate tech stacks between the teams will reduce knowledge sharing across the organization. Challenge number 2, decreased efficiency through context switching. DevOps teams that manage the application and the whole infrastructure often need to switch context. And developers additionally don't usually have the necessary depth of skills to operate a full infrastructure and application stack. And lastly, as an individual as well as a team, we have a limited cognitive load. And if that cognitive load gets exceeded, the team will experience decreased efficiency. The challenge number 3 is that teams can't be granted enough autonomy. It can be hard for an organization to transition to autonomous teams, and most commonly the reason for that is a lack of visibility and transparency on the digital or product delivery initiatives. And how can we grant autonomy if we don't have these insights on how well a team is doing? Furthermore, unlimited autonomy also cannot and should not be granted. And many organizations actually lack the ability to impose automated governance, and they lack a unified approach to maintaining policies and best practices, both on single and multi-cloud environments. And they really have no way to confidently provide borders in which the teams can operate autonomously. And as a result, too little autonomy is granted. The last challenge is that end-to-end product teams don't scale well. And while that approach works well for a single team, it just doesn't scale. All of your teams will be spending a significant amount of time on solving similar issues. And the previously mentioned cognitive load is another reason why teams with the full end-to-end responsibility over application and infrastructure will not scale well. Now that we have defined our set of problems, how can we so overcome them? One answer is platforms and platform teams. The platform model is a new-ish approach to scaling DevOps. Initially, the DevOps movement popularized product teams with full end-to-end responsibility. And as discussed in the previous section, this approach can lead to chaos, to intransparency, and inefficiency when scaled in a large and complex organization. Product teams with full responsibility over application and infrastructure don't scale well. But what does scale well are platforms. And why is that? Through a platform, we can provide standardization. Typically, a platform will enable self-service. That means that a product team can just get on the platform, search for what they need, and take it. So there's no ordering of infrastructure, no manual handoffs, and no waiting time. And this really means that our teams, they can move quickly. Another advantage of a platform is that it can provide boundaries for the teams. So within these boundaries, the product team has full autonomy. So what is it that a platform typically provides? And the general answer is it depends. So it might not actually be necessary to offer all sorts of services through the platform. Here it is really crucial to think of the minimal viable platform. So what can we provide to our teams that will solve the current bottleneck or limitation? And that's where we start. Yet for inspirational purposes, the following service might sooner or later be provided through a platform, which will be managed by a platform team. So there's infrastructure, environments, deployment pipelines, and other internal services that enable the internal customers, which are our product teams, to build, deploy, and run the applications. Then a platform will provide continuous infrastructure improvement that the product teams don't have to worry about. And it delivers improved governance. So as you can see, the platform reduces the cognitive load of the product teams, letting them focus more on the really value-adding activities. And furthermore, the teams are not solving all the same challenges individually, and worst case, multiple times, but we have that centralized, so we're more efficient. With the platform actually comes a platform team. So the platform team has the necessary depth of skills to develop and maintain the platform. And a platform that we build with the customer in mind can actually significantly reduce the toil and overhead for the individual product teams. Hence, a great user experience on the platform is actually a major success factor towards adoption and developer satisfaction. Because what you want is that the product teams want to use it instead of that you have to force them on the platform, which is pretty similar to the products you offer to your end users. Now, should you consider building or using an internal service platform? The answer is yes, if you want to become a mature DevOps organization. The latest data suggests that DevOps evolution and self-service offerings go together. And a highly mature DevOps organization provides a large number of self-service offerings to their product teams. And looking at platforms, there's actually different maturity levels amongst them. So at a low-level DevOps evolution, we see that organizations offer self-service for CI/CD workflows, for internal infrastructure, and for public cloud infrastructure. Then in the mid-evolution organizations, they expand their internal platforms by providing development environments, monitoring solutions, as well as alerting solutions. And the high evolution organizations, they tend to offer a wide variety of internal platforms. And this is where you can see more self-service for deployment patterns, database provisioning, and audit logging. Well, if platforms work so great, why is it that not every organization offers them? Why do many organizations actually struggle to provide them? The two major challenges are lack of technical skills and/or lack of time. Profiles that fulfill the high requirements regarding the technical skills to operate and build such a platform with the most modern technologies and tools, they are really hard to find. And that is where organizations typically struggle to get the right people on board. Another scenario is that an organization has these key resources, but they're actually bound to critical projects. And that last point blends with the lack of time. So lack of time is often a symptom of too much manual work and not enough standardization to create economies of scale. And interestingly enough, a lack of time doesn't go away with the maturity, as the platform team now has proven that they provide value services, so they are getting an even higher demand. And that is why a successful platform team actually relies on good standardization. And that is where a platform also can fail. Unclear organizational structures can also hinder platform creation and success. And furthermore, a platform team is needed and must be clearly defined which responsibilities they actually take in the organization. And lastly, a platform is often seen as a project instead of a product or a team. And that causes, the causes of that are actually mistakes in funding. So a platform team is needed to continuously develop and maintain the platform. We can see the platform just as a product, just like all the other products you provide to your end users. And the customer of the internal platforms, that's your product teams. Now, we would like to know if you currently are offering any DevOps self-service platforms or offerings in your organization. And please, again, feel free to post in the chat. I would love to read your comments and insights.
At the last point on the agenda, we would like to introduce you to the Deloitte DevOps Cloud Platform, or in short, DCP. We are extremely excited about this cutting-edge platform, so let's dive right into it. So far, we have discussed challenges with adopting DevOps, challenges with scaling DevOps, and challenges with providing internal self-service platforms. And we can support you on all these 3 levels. We can offer you time and niche skills and one of the most advanced platforms currently available on the market. Let's talk about DevOps adoption. Moving from a traditional to a modern DevOps cloud native approach is hard, really hard. Today's software development, deliver and manage lifecycle is too complicated. A DevOps team must cover all of the following areas: release optimization, testing, security, reporting, monitoring. It's simply just too much for one team to handle. It leaves the team with an exceeded cognitive load and a reduced efficiency. The solution is to simplify. This part of the lifecycle can and should be simplified so that the product team can focus most of their time on design and development, as well as continuous improvements that benefits the clients at the end. That simplification is where platforms come into play. This is one of the capabilities that DCP offers you right out of the box. Our platform accelerates your DevOps journey on all the levels of pace, bringing process, architecture, culture, and engineering together. So Tim, let's take a closer look at this now.
We often experience that there is a lack of visibility throughout the organization. So how is a specific app doing? How well are we doing on security overall? How well are we doing on security on app level? These are really simple questions, but there's a complex answer. And DCP handles this complexity for you. And why is it so hard to answer these questions? It's because to get these KPIs, you need to go to 6 different tool types, and for each tool type, there's probably 4 different tools being used in your organization. And with DCP, you get all of that automatically generated, and it will give you digital benchmarking and insights for all the levels of your stakeholders, from CXO to developer, and across all the tools. It will show you exactly where you need to improve, for example, on quality or security. And improvement activities, they'll be immediately visible across all teams and tool agnostic. And this is really beautiful because your teams can have the freedom to choose their tools, and it's motivating for them to see the results of their improvement activities and actions shown transparently. An example is that you will see that an app is not doing well in regards to security. So you will let the team know, and the team can use the insights in DCP to take actions that will reflect in the KPIs, so to take the right actions. And DCP can help you if you experience challenges with DevSecOps maturity as well. So DCP offers DevSecOps workflow orchestration, and that means that you can use pre-baked workflow templates for build, unit test, code quality review, static and dynamic analysis, monitoring, etc., etc. And this will substantially accelerate your DevOps maturity and the ability to provide offerings to your teams fast. And you simply tap into the global Deloitte knowledge. Are you unable to track DevSecOps best practices? Also here DCP can help. We use machine learning models and DevSecOps rules to validate industry best practices as well as your specific standards that you might have. We offer 600 best practices out of the box, ranging from well-written commit messages to correctly configured Kubernetes clusters, and all of that is in code. Additionally, we check all of your cloud accounts for security, architecture, optimization, and compliance. As a 4th capability, we would like to mention the machine learning-driven cost optimization. DCP will give you precise instructions on how you can improve your cloud cost structure, and it works for different cloud providers such as Azure or AWS. Here's an example on how your organization will interact with the platform. So you just ask DCP what you want, and you get it. It's as simple as that. And these examples you see here show that DCP connects all the layers of an organization. As a developer, you can ask DCP, can you please set up my toolchain and CI/CD pipeline? and you get it. As a CIO, you might want to know how your KPIs are performing. You see it. And the security officer can analyze for all the apps how they are scoring regarding their security. And this is really what DCP offers. It's connecting all the parts of the organization and on all levels of pace. These were just a few things DCP offers, but there's much more. And we'd like to mention that you will not purchase the whole platform at once, but instead will carefully analyze and select with you which functionalities of DCP make sense for your organization and in your situation and for your goals. So if you get started with DCP, we're going to start different activities depending on your maturity and your needs. And here you can see a roadmap going through 4 different levels of maturity. And these are more technical topics, but at the same time, you can be sure that we will support you with the more intangible areas, just like organizational structure, value stream mapping, and change management. So that was the presentation part. And now we would like to invite you to have a conversation with us also after this session. So we'd really love to talk about your DevOps journey, which challenges you are experiencing and what your goals are and why you're doing DevOps. And then maybe we can also talk about if DCP is relevant in your case. And after this presentation, you will actually receive a survey about how you found this grab-and-go session about DevOps at scale. And first of all, we would really like you to answer that survey so we can learn about, was that relevant for you? Did you like it? What could we improve? And then there's also an option in the survey to mark if you would like to be contacted by us after the session. Because I think due to GDPR reasons, we are not able to contact you after this session. So if you would like to have a conversation, please click the I want to be contacted by you button or field in this survey. Alternatively, you can, of course, write an email to Stefan and me, and then we take it from there. So now I would like to, or we would like to open the Q&A session. I think we have a bit of time left, a good 10-15 minutes. And let's see what we have. So here's the first question. What is the relationship between DevOps and project management? That is a good question. So first of all, project management, that can be mainly 2 streams. So we have the plan-driven or more traditional project management methods like Prince2 or PMBOK, where you really have these timelines, Gantt charts, work packages. What is the team working on today and what is the team working on in 6 months? And that could be closer to waterfall, but you can, of course, also plan in the V model, so have iterations in certain parts of the project. On the other side, the little bit more modern or trendy approach is obviously Agile. So there we have the most popular is probably doing Scrum, but also tools or methodologies like Kanban or extreme programming. And if we relate that to DevOps, then first of all, it depends on what you want to do or which part of DevOps you're implementing. So I would say if you just implement the tooling part and a bit of the processes to just improve the way you're doing your IT engineering, so more the quality engineering part, then I wouldn't see any problem with going with the classic project management tools like or methodologies like PMBOK or Prince2. Yet if you're going with the whole holistic approach of DevOps, so using processes, people, and tools, and really going for this deploying rapidly to your end users and gathering that feedback. So also if you have this kind of product where you need to gather feedback and develop it all the time, then typically agile development methodologies or project management methodologies would be the more relevant to do And generally, project management is a part within DevOps. So DevOps cannot live without it. And this is the processes and people part of the three pillars of DevOps. Yet on the highest performing teams that really have this rapid feedback loop in place and release every 2 sprints, these teams you will typically have grant them more and more autonomy with the trust that is built, and hopefully with a tool like DCP or something else where you can see precisely how the team is performing. So from there you can grant the team more autonomy, and that will reduce how much project management you're gonna impose on them. But the team is gonna pick, for example, Scrum to just organize itself. That is the answer for that question. We have...
Great answer, Tim.
Thank you.
And then we have another question here. Which challenges for scaling DevOps do you see most often? That's also a very great question. We see 3 challenges mainly. That's the 3 largest ones, and the one is the one that Tim actually just mentioned at the end. Great overlay. That's the trust in the team autonomies. That is the balance between the processes and the people in the organization. Sometimes, which leads to the second challenge, is maybe the inability to actually grant that access. Depending on how your organization structure is and how your management layer is structured, it is not possible to grant that autonomy to the teams. So there is a fine line between project management and the granting of autonomy there, and those are the 2 main issues we see. A third one is the removal, so to speak, of the wall between the dev and ops. Usually we see developers, in their mindset, the task they are doing is done after they have committed their code to version control or to the source control like GitHub or GitLab or any other. But that's actually not the case in a true DevOps setup. We also need the automated test. We need the other end part of the code in order to run the full pipelines and enable the autonomy on the teams.
Yeah. Thank you. Maybe to add on to that, so now we talk about the challenge, for example, that developers don't take on this extra responsibility or something that they might not even want to do with automating tests or being responsible for more of the life cycle. So this can be a good conversation to have if you experience that we find out why is that. Because intrinsically or inherently, I believe that everyone has the motivation to do a good job. And typically it should be motivating to take on more of this responsibility because it should be more rewarding and get better insights on why we're actually doing this instead of just getting a work package and get over with it. But if it's not happening, then we need to see what that is. So is that a cultural thing? Is it a skills thing? Do we need to upskill our development organization? So this is some of the questions that we would then typically ask you if you experience that challenge.
During the presentation, we also mentioned that this is a big mindset or a big change in the mindset for the developers. A lot of these tasks are not tasks that you are taught in the university or during your education. It is more about programming. So it is a change in the organization and in the structure and how the teams works. So we do understand why some developers are not like immediately keen to take on these exercises and responsibilities.
Yeah, it's just it's more fun as a developer to just produce a new functionality, but don't really test it. I experienced that myself.
Exactly. But in order to have a successful flow and automated flow, it is part of the exercise.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next question. How long does the DCP implementation process take? That is a really good question. That again depends. So there is a process we typically run through. I think we also have that as a backup slide. So if we take you on a fully fledged journey, this would typically it would typically look like this. But the takeaway is also that we need to think minimal viable platform. So DCP is massive, and it doesn't necessarily make sense to just plug that over your organization without really thinking about what we want to achieve. So what we would rather do is to discover the pain points you have or the most extreme bottleneck that is hindering you to improve your business or transform to a higher performing IT organization. And then we would carefully select which tool or area of DCP we would implement first. And there we would typically go for a pilot. So we can tell a lot about how great DCP works, but what we like to do is discover one area, pilot it, then we prove the value to you that it actually works, and then from there we can then scale it or pick the next journey. But to begin with, that can be anything from 2 sprints, so a month, to 2 or 3 months, depending on which functionality we start out with. Also to mention, within Deloitte, we have DevOps maturity models, also agility maturity models, and SRE maturity models. So there we might also pick and choose to just weather check or health check the different areas in your organizations to really find out where can we invest to get the best value out of it in a short amount of time. And then another question, do we have time? Yeah, I think we have 3 minutes left. DCP, which is the most popular tool? Again, really good question. As we already told you, there's like this whole bandwidth of tools and functionalities we have in there. I think I would like to mention 2 tools that are really, how did you call it, most popular. So the first one would be the workflow orchestration. So that is because a lot of our clients, they have problems getting into these new tools and technologies and doing that at a really fast pace. And so there we can come in with all these blueprints, with these templates, with the pre-baked CI/CD pipelines to just give your organization that lift to start out quicker. Actually, for that, we have a slide as well. So there you can see kind of if you use DCP, you can accelerate. So here's 3 examples of how something that would take you alone, and I'm sure you can do it, but it would take you maybe 3 to 6 months or a year. And with DCP, that just gets accelerated. And this acceleration is what clients typically go for. And a second option that is really nice is actually the cloud cost optimization, because that's also a really great starting point to just plug that into your cloud or into your clouds if you're running on several options, and generate these reports and show you that it actually, or prove that value that it actually says here and here and here you need to change to something different, and then you will actually save money.
Yeah. Should we see if there is any
other questions left? No, that was the 4 questions. So I think the only thing left here is to say thank you for taking the time to watch this grab-and-go session about DevOps at scale today. We hope to have a conversation with you afterwards in more detail and about your organization. And
please reach out to us if we can help you.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you.